Welcome to our session today. I'm Janice and I'm with Blue Moon Industries. Today we're going to take a look at one of our products for Acumatica, our Chargeback Processing product. And first, though, a little bit about us. We have been developing products within the Dynamics channel for quite some time, 1994, and we've started to bring our products into other ERPs, and we're super excited to start bringing our products into the Acumatica space. So this is something that just really an exciting time for us, and as we start to move forward. So today what we're going to do is take a look at our chargeback processing product. And chargebacks, if you're in the industry and you're familiar with what they call big box retailers, you're familiar with the fact that they will take adjustments and credits off amounts that they owe their vendors based on a variety of reasons, and also sometimes with no reason at all. And the requirement of the person receiving that payment is to keep track of them, to know when those chargebacks or adjustments are valid and when they're not, and also how to research them and report on them. And that can be a big deal. So if there's an easier way to do it, I'm pretty sure everybody would want that easier way. And especially because it's not just one, sometimes it's thousands. So if you could add that deductions capability into your Acumatica system, if you could keep track of those by different categories, often, for example, there's freight adjustments. The customer was charged freight and they shouldn't have been. They were out of compliance. The box wasn't the right size. The label on the box wasn't the right size, things like that. Or there could just be a variety of reasons why they're charging you back. But keeping track of that can often identify a problem. Maybe you have a problem with a shipper and they're always trying to deliver outside the delivery window, or they're going to the wrong dock door, or the company that provides your labels made a change to the size or the dimensions and they didn't let you know. So the kinds of things that you might want to be tracking as far as those categories are really what can help you in being able to either combat the chargebacks or at least establish that you've got a problem that needs to get resolved. You can also use the system to automatically create adjustments related to those chargebacks. So this is what we're going to take a look at now. So our chargeback processing essentially adds that deductions management capability into your Acumatica system. And so what that's doing is allowing you to process the cash receipt or the payment from that customer along with all of those chargebacks in a single transaction. In earlier systems or maybe other systems, or maybe without having that chargeback capability, you're putting in credit memos, you're applying the credit memos, then you're applying the check, and then you're hoping it balances. And it doesn't give you that way of really identifying the places where you need to go in and maybe analyze and also research some of the reasons for these chargebacks. And so any company that has this kind of relationship with their customers would benefit from this particular product. We've even had some sort of non-standard, maybe not so much big box retailers, but just situations where these kinds of adjustments occur, where they found a lot of value in using our product and being able to manage all of those different adjustments. So we're going to take a look at it in the Acumatica system, and we're just going to start by looking at the setup. So when you're setting it up, the reason I like to bring up this window is that it shows you that we have really thought this through. This is a fully integrated tool within your Acumatica system. It's not an add-on that you're accessing in and out of. It's really built right in. And a lot of the setup, it relates to how you're working with your customers and how you want the system to react based on that. So you'll see in this adjustment window, you've got some GL accounts that you can put in as defaults. You've got inventory IDs and also that remittance numbering sequence, so that when you see the remittance that you've received from that particular customer, you can keep track of all the aspects of it in one window. So you're keeping track of the amount of cash you received. You're keeping track of all those different adjustments. There's also some options here for whether you get a $0 adjustment. Maybe you need to move something from one category to another. A lot of times we'll see customers that will have what they call an unknown type. They just need to get the cash receipt processed. They can't do that analysis right now. They hand that off to someone else who then determines the reasons behind those adjustments. In that case, they can move them from being in an unknown category or maybe a miscellaneous category into the actual reason later, and then they could net and debit and credit those out through the system. So that's the setup window. So then we start to really kind of set up those different types. So the setup is a little bit like a salad bar. You're going to slice and dice, you're chopping, you're going to create all those different types of adjustments. And the reason you do that up front is that there are some components to it. It does need to have some thought put into it. But then at the time you're doing the cash receipt processing and pulling that remittance in from that customer, it's very easy to then go in and make all of those decisions. You're not trying to reinvent the wheel and set up GL accounts and do all of that at the time that you're also trying to get that cash processed against that customer's account. So in this window, in our setup window here for our different adjustment types, this is where you can put in all of those different reason codes. Some customers, like I think Target and Walmart, use a numeric code system. A 9502 or a 2407 means something. So you can build as many different adjustment codes into the system as you want. And that way you're following that customer's guideline. And when you're dealing with those big box retailers, the closer you can get to exactly what they're doing, the better, because they're very picky about that. They're also very, very strict about whether they're even going to allow you to say, no, Walmart, you were wrong. And if you are saying, Walmart, you are wrong, you better have all your ducks in a row. And so we allow you to build as many different adjustment types using alpha, numeric, whatever it is, characters in order to describe those different kinds of chargebacks or adjustments that those customers might be giving you. In addition, we can tie those back to whether it's a debit or a credit. And also we use a term for the default rule called allowing or disallowing, because if you allow it, it might mean that you were expecting it. A common recurring allowed adjustment is often advertising co-op. Co-op is something they might get $1,000 a month to put the product, so that you can put the product, or that you should be putting the product on an end cap. It's going to get more sales. You're going to get more traffic, all those different things. And that might come in every month. And you don't need to research it. You just know that that is exactly, what's coming in. On the other hand, if they take a credit for a return and you haven't seen the product yet, probably not going to allow that. You want to do that research because you don't want them taking that credit twice, and then you can really keep track of that credit that they've taken in advance of returning the product back to you. And then, of course, tying back, my favorite, the general ledger accounts, so that the whole system is handled from start to finish, and the GL is updated properly for either allowing it, which might go, let's say in our advertising example, might go against an advertising account or a marketing account, where if we don't allow it, it's essentially, as you'll see, it's going to go in and out of a clearing account, so that you've got a debit memo on that customer's account as a placeholder while you do your research. And then you can determine, if you are going to give them a credit, how you want that applied at that time against the GL accounts. So it gives you that ability to track it and not lose sight of it without having to make a snap decision about whether you're actually in compliance or out of compliance, whether you shipped them and charged them for freight and you shouldn't have. You don't have to try to make that decision at the same time you're processing the cash receipt. So the next step is really just to get the remittance. So once that setup is in place, it's really just waiting for you to get the cash receipt from the customer. So then when you get that cash receipt, what's going to happen is you're going to go right into the remittance window that you see here. And this will give you the ability to go in and then walk through that whole remittance to the customer. So you receive the payment from the customer. The customer has given you, in some cases, the let's say the check stub with the details. In many customers' cases, they might even be coming in via EDI with all of these remittances already on them, and therefore they're already sort of coded and brought in as a single integrated transaction. Or in some cases, it is paper, but it's pages and pages of remittances, meaning that the amount is, maybe it's $25,000, but there's 3 pages of adjustments that they're putting against that particular amount. Maybe they're paying $50,000 in invoices. So you'll see in this window, you'll come in and put in that remittance information, the basics, the payment number, the amount of the payment. In this example, we received a check for $450. And with that check for $450, they're paying $500 in invoices. So in that case, they're paying more invoices than they have money for. And that difference, that $50, is our adjustment. So it's a very simple example, I understand. But just walking through that, you've got that cash receipt. It's going to be processed, debiting cash, crediting the accounts receivable. No magic there. The invoices that you'll see that are available to apply will appear in that Documents to Apply tab, and you can mark those off, assuming that you're not bringing it in an integration. So if you were going in manually, you'd mark off the invoices that were indicated that were available for payment. And then in the other tab, the second tab there, Adjustments, that will open our window, which will give you that window that will allow you to enter in all of those adjustments. So whether that $50 is, 10 adjustments of $5 a piece or one for $50, you can identify for each one of those adjustments what the adjustment type ID is, what the amount is, and whether you're allowing it or disallowing it. So even if that setup that you have in the initial setup of the system is showing you that your typical response would be to allow or to disallow, in those cases, what you can do is you can always go against that. If this time you're not sure, you thought you already got co-op for July, they're sending something else and trying to take it again, you might disallow it so you can do that research. Or the opposite might be true. The return might be coming in, you knew it was coming, you'll go ahead and process it, and then you're fine with that. So whatever it might be, you certainly on a per remittance basis have the ability to make those decisions that might be contrary to how you have the system initially set up. So you'll see that there's also an adjustment reference number. If you're familiar with the industry, one of those things about trying to go to the big box retailers is kind of like poking the bear with a stick. You better know what you're doing when you do it. And in their case, they are very much sticklers about that reference number, because as far as they're concerned, the invoice indicated on the particular document is paid in full. Invoice 123 paid in full. They don't care whether they used $1 of cash and $499 of chargebacks. That invoice is paid. But if it was paid with a particular chargeback or adjustment that they've given you, that's going to have its own reference code. And that's a critical piece of what you need to research and go back to them and say, hey, actually we were in compliance, or we did deliver during the time frame, or we did charge you freight and we should have, and they owe you that money back. So without that reference number, you might find that you're really it's sort of at a disadvantage when you try to get that money collected. So all of that gets entered in here and processed along with the cash receipt. There isn't any additional functionality that's needed in order to get it processed. You're going to process that payment through the same way. So you'll see that in this window, all of the payment information is there. All of the application history is there, and all of the details of the credit memos, the debit memos, and all of that is created as well. So let me talk a little bit about the debit memo. So when this gets processed, as we talked about, it's essentially a check with a credit memo against the invoice to make everything balance. So in my case, the $500 minus the $50 adjustment equals the $450 I got in cash. Now, if I don't agree with that $50, I need a place to have it in the system so that I can do the research. If I subsequently learn, yep, we screwed up, darn it, I'm going to put a valid credit memo into the system, apply it against that debit memo, use the credit memo to put it against the freight account or whatever GL account I should for that credit, apply those, and now they're gone from the customer's account. If I do that same research and I determine, wait a minute, we were right, we actually were right, and they owe us that $50, I could print that debit memo, send that debit memo to the customer. It will have that reference number on it, and they can pay you against that debit memo and then pay you for that adjustment. And it allows you to keep track of it on the customer's account, because what you're saying is, I'm going to clear it off the check because that's what you asked me to do, but I'm not sure whether you don't still owe us that $50 or not. And so we're going to automatically create that debit memo that's going to go against that customer's account while you're doing that research. And again, going back to that allowing or disallowing, if you disallow it, you'll see the debit memo. If you do allow it, it's going to go against the payment as a credit on that invoice, and that'll be the end of it because you agreed with the credit that they took. So in the debit memo case, you'll see it'll still pull that same inventory ID that you put on the original transaction. It will be against the customer's account. It will be for the amount of the chargebacks. If there were 10 chargebacks, there will be 10 adjustments, so you can keep track of all of the different types of adjustments that might have been on that particular payment. So it really allows you to not just process the cash receipt with some, on the fly credits, if you will. It also gives you the ability to report and analyze all of these different types. So like I said, if you've identified the different types, the freight, maybe compliance, overpayment, whatever it might be, you now have the ability, in addition to just knowing that you've processed it and you've put it onto their account, to go back and do some analysis, whether it's a report or an inquiry in the system, to start to see some trends or maybe see a problem that you could identify pretty early, because you're going to start, let's say, getting those chargebacks. And we've had customers resolve a lot of issues that way, including carriers that were delivering inappropriately or outside the delivery times. Again, compliance errors, those are really a lot of the ones that we get a lot of in talking to customers, because those big box retailers are going to turn around and sell those items with that label on it or with that sticker on it, or it's got to go through their systems properly. And if it doesn't, then you could be in trouble. So based on all of that and that information about our chargeback processing product, we would really like to show you a demo of it. You can talk to Amy, and I've got some contact information coming up next. But we'd really love to talk to you, or if you're a partner, you and your customer, about how you could add our chargeback processing for acuMatica to your system and really round out all of that functionality when you're working with those big box retailers. So just to close, any questions? I don't know exactly. Oh, good. I don't know how they come in. So,
okay. So does the RMA ticket in acuMatica tie to the Blue Moon app? So when the RMA is received at my warehouse, it creates a pending credit memo in Blue Moon and auto adjusts if there is a unit shortage on the RMA.
Wow, that's
and Mike, you can join the chat if you want to.
Maybe
share your screen.
I'm not sure about the RMA. You mean if someone is taking an adjustment for a return prior to receiving the goods? Is that what we're talking about here? And then they subsequently have a return? I'm not sure
if Mike wants to share.
Okay.
Mike, you can feel free to share your audio, video, and talk if you'd like.
Or we could go, we could.
Yeah, I can take down the questions.
Too. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Because he had another question too.
Okay.
He doesn't have his audio. Maybe book a demo offline. Okay. I
Okay,
will
sure.
reach out to Mike.
Okay.
He
Great.
had 2 questions. So I'll make
All
sure
right.
I take those questions, Mike, and get back to you on those. And then we can schedule a time for you to see the product as well.
Great. Excellent. All right, so here's our contact information. Please visit our website and see all of our products that we have out there and our roadmap of what's coming soon for Acumatica. And if you have any questions at all, you can reach us at channelmanagement@bluemoonisv.com. We'd love to hear from you and any more questions and feedback after the session.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.